In this chapter, we're going to be building a new website from scratch, a simple brochure type site that you might build for a small local business. We'll start fresh by installing WordPress again locally or at your SiteGround server and preparing the default 2016 theme for customization. In this new WordPress installation, you'll be working on your local computer as a staging environment as if you were going to transfer the site to a live server. You can also use your live environment at SiteGround for this, developing the site at a new staging domain. Here's your challenge for this first video of Chapter 3. Make sure you've downloaded the latest version of WordPress, and then start MAMP and install WordPress in your local development environment. Then go into the settings area and get the site ready as we did in the last chapter. Pause the video now and get it set up. If you're using the SiteGround server instead, your challenge is to set up a fresh WordPress installation manually instead of using the auto installer. To do this, you'll have to use the cPanel file manager to upload the files manually into a new subdirectory or folder that you'll create under your student domain. Use the file manager and your code editor, as well as the database section of the cPanel to manually install WordPress. Pause the video now, and I'll show you how to do both processes when you come back. Good luck! Okay, I hope you got on well with that. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have the latest version of WordPress by going to wordpress.org and hitting the download WordPress button, making sure that I have the latest version. And if I open Windows Explorer and open my WordPress folder, you'll see that I do have WordPress 4.5.1, and I did download the zip file and then unzipped it. And here are my WordPress files. Now I'll go into c:MAMP in another Windows Explorer folder, open htdocs, and I'm going to create a new folder here called brochure site. Open that up, select all the files, and hold down Ctrl and copy them over. Alright, now that those files are copied over, I know that they're in the folder called brochure-site, and I'm going to go ahead and start MAMP and get myself ready to look. So I'll say OK, and I'm going to open the start page. That's going to open the MAMP start page in my browser so that I can easily connect with the database. PHP myadmin is available up at the top menu or down in the content area there. And I'm going to create a new database for this new WordPress installation. I'm going to call it brochure site and hit create. Great, now that that's been created, I can go ahead and connect the WordPress wp-config file. Here we are. Okay, inside of brochure site, I'm going to go ahead and rename the wp-config-sample to just wp-config. And then if I double click that, it'll open inside of my text and code editor. There it is. Alright, wp-config.php inside of the brochure site folder. I know that the database name is the same. If you remember, the username and the password are both root in our local installation, and the localhost needs to identify the port. And so let's go back. Let's see. We go back into the start page of MAMP. I can see that the MySQL port is 3306. And this is also visible inside the database up here at the top. The server's localhost :3306. So I can define the host inside of the wp-config file as localhost :3306. I'm just going to hit Ctrl S to save it. And Now I can just open a new window, new tab in my browser, localhost / brochure-site. If everything's connected properly, it should recognize that WordPress isn't quite installed yet, and I'll choose my language and go ahead and set up the website. If you do use a password that you can remember for your local computer, you have to confirm the use of a weak password and hit install WordPress. Great, I hope that worked as smoothly as it did for me. And now we'll go ahead and get started setting up inside of the Settings tab. The last few things that I want to do is under Settings General. Set up a few things like the tagline. Leave the URLs the same. Email address. Let's choose my time zone. Those I can leave as the defaults and save changes. Next, under writing, I don't think I'll have to change any of these for now. But under reading, I am going to go ahead and make a static page for now, the sample page, one of my front page display. I know that under discussion and media, I'm going to leave that as is for now. And under permalinks, I'm definitely going to choose post name and then save changes. Nice job. Now I'm going to open the new site in a new tab. Take a look. There we go. The sample page is my home page. One more thing. I've still got the admin bar up at the top of the site here. I'm going to remember to go ahead and go back under my profile and turn that off so that I can look at the site as the public will see it. Great. Now if I refresh here, I think that admin bar should disappear. This is what the site will really look like. Now, for those of you that are using SiteGround and your live server environment, let's manually set up WordPress inside of SiteGround using the cPanel. So log into your SiteGround hosting account and then click Go to cPanel up at the top left. First, we have to go into the File Manager and create a fresh, clean folder, and we can call it brochure-site. Usually, I'll dismiss this button for the File Manager by clicking Show Hidden Files, and also skip this question and open this directory when I hit the File Manager. So here I am in my public HTML original WordPress installation area. What I'm going to do is add another folder right inside of public HTML by going up here and clicking New Folder. I'm going to call it brochure-site, and I'll hit Create New Folder. So now I have a new folder called Brochure Site. If I double click that folder, you can see that the directory is empty. But what I'm going to do is just go to Upload, and I can hit Browse at the top here. And here is where I can go into my computer and I can find my WordPress folder and the latest version of WordPress that I have saved. So I'll double click that folder I had and open up the folder that I had unzipped, and inside the WordPress folder I have all of these files right here. Now, one thing you may have found is by uploading using the File Manager, you can't select multiple items and upload them all at once. And so there is a solution here. I'll cancel out of that for now, and I'm going to open the Windows Explorer. I've navigated to that WordPress folder, and what I'm going to do is select everything inside of it, right-click anywhere in there, and I'm going to go Send to Compressed or Zipped Folder. Now this will compress everything into one .zip file that I'll be able to quickly upload using the File Manager, and then I can unzip using the File Manager right on the server. So now I have a zip file which is named whatever I had right-clicked up here. If you're on a Mac, it'll be called archive.zip by default. I'm just going to click that once and then a second time, and I'm going to rename it WP. Doesn't matter what we call it, just so that we know what it is. And so it is a compressed, zipped folder, and when we go back to the uploading screen for the file manager, we can go over there and find it and upload it as one file. There we go. I'll pause the video while this uploads. Gives me a success message down at the right-hand side. If I just click Go Back, it closes that tab in my browser, and I go back and see it right here. In the File Manager, if you highlight that file, you can click the Extract button up at the top right, and then Extract Files, and it quickly extracts everything. Then you can say Reload right here. You can see that I've got all my WordPress core files right inside of my folder, which is called brochure-site. It basically made a copy of all the files that were within the zip file. So if I highlight that zip file, I can save a little bit of space by deleting that file. Now I can highlight the wp-config-sample.php file and click Rename up here. I can go right here and just rename it wp-config.php and click Rename File. And now we have the wp-config.php file ready to go. If I double click this file, I can download it to my computer, edit it in my code editor, and then upload it back to the server. However, there's a feature directly inside the file manager where you can open up a file inside of a browser-based code editor. If you click Code Editor with that file highlighted and click Edit, now I can see my whole wp-config.php file inside of the browser, and I can go up here and save it once I've made my edits. I know I'm going to need a database name, a username, a password, and a host name, however. So I do need to go back into the cPanel and go down to the Databases area and click MySQL Databases. I'm going to create a new database, and I'm just going to call this one Brochure, and the whole name is going to be my account name underscore and then the name that I place here. So I'll create the database, and it's added the database, so I can click Go Back. And you do need to create a user for the database so that the WordPress config file can log in as that user. And so here are my current databases, and if I go down a little bit further, you can see I can add a new user. So I'm just going to use the same name for this user. It only lets me use 7 characters, so I'm missing the E on the end for the username. And I'm going to type a password that I can remember, and type it again so that it knows that we are using the same password, and I can click Create a User. Click Go Back one more time, and now there's one more step. I need to give this user permissions to use the certain database. So if I want this user to be able to access this database, I can just select these 2 items and click Add. And I want to click the All Privileges button, click Make Changes, and now I've granted privileges to this database for the user that I created. So if I just click Go Back here, and I can actually get right back to the cPanel home. Now I know what those credentials were, so I can go back into my wp-config file and enter them here. Now I've entered those 3 credentials, and I know that when we're creating databases using the cPanel, we use localhost as the host name. And so I can go up and click Save at the top right, and then I can just close that code editor, and I know my wp-config file is set up. That should be all I need to do inside of the file manager. So I can go ahead and close that, and inside of the cPanel, I can just grab my main domain, and I'll hit Ctrl C to copy. open a new tab in my browser, and I'll paste that right there. But I'm going to add the name of the folder that I created right at the end there, and it looks like I've had an error establishing a database connection. No worries, this is very common. I can tell that WordPress is trying to see the database, and so something is working. Probably I mistyped the credentials when I was setting it up. So let's look at the databases section of the cPanel, and it looks like it's GregD11, not GregD1, that I was typing inside of my file manager in the WP config file. Very common error which may have happened to you as well. So I'll go back into the file manager. I know I need to open the brochure-site folder and then go to wp-config.php, and I'll go up and click the code editor and click edit. Now as I look at the database credentials, I can see that I'm just missing a number 1 here and a number 1 here. I'll just click save and then close, and I can close the file manager now. Now if I go back to this address and hit refresh, great, I've got my WordPress install happening. I can click continue, and now I'll fill in my credentials and set up my WordPress site. I've filled in all my credentials here. I used a password that I could easily remember, which was a weak one, so I had to click confirm use of weak password again, put in my email address, and I'll click install WordPress. Great, I love that success message. I'll click login just to go ahead and make sure everything is working. I think my browser is remembering my password. It's one I often use. And great, I've got a new WordPress installation. If I right click on visit site and go over into my new tab, I've got a beautiful new WordPress installation that I installed manually. You can see that that takes quite a few more steps than it does to go into your cPanel and use the WordPress installer. But hopefully that gives you a good understanding of how WordPress works and connects to the database. In this video, you set up a new WordPress installation either on your local computer using MAMP or at your SiteGround live server completely manually. Maybe you even did them both. In the next video, you'll make one more edit to the wp-config.php file to make sure your site is using best practices for security. Plus, you'll install 4 plugins that we'll be using to customize the site. See you there!